Why do I want to become the chair of the African Union? One, because I'm an African, and secondly, I also think that based on my experience over the years, I have the ability to go to this institution and transform it. African Union, as a history, at the founding of African Union in Addis Ababa in 1964, at that time the clarion call was first Africa must be free. So it was formed more or less as a liberation movement to liberate Africa. The second conference, which was in Cairo, the issue of African unity and formation of continental government was very central. If you read what Kwame Nkrumah said of the Nasser, Haile Selassie, Mwalimu Nyerere, and Kadhalika, and so on. But then at that time there were two schools of thought. Those who are saying continental government now, but those who are saying no, you need to go gradually. First begin by building regional blocks, and regional blocks become the building units to the continental government. That is where there was two different schools of thought. One led by Nkrumah and Nasser, the other one was Mwalimu Nyerere, and people like Senghor of Senegal and so on. But that's how the blocks were built. The East African community was formed thereafter. The community thrived for a long time, but there were differences which emerged. As a result of that, community collapsed. I was myself here in Dar es Salaam the day the community collapsed. We had to come down here for a conference in Dar es Salaam on East African Airways. Then the following day, the East African Airways could not take off. We had to fly back on Egypt Air to Nairobi. After that, because of differences, the border between Kenya and Tanzania was closed many years. To travel from Nairobi to Dar es Salaam, you had to either go to Addis Ababa and get a flight, or go to Lusaka and connect to Dar es Salaam. People suffered seriously as a result of this. But then that is history, it's a long history. Eventually, councils of goodwill prevailed, and eventually the community was reestablished. And we are here where we are today. But now, regional integration is important as a building block to a continental unity. It's very, very important. But the AU, in my view, is an institution that can do much more than it's doing today. And that is why I want to go there. Africa is the richest continent on the planet Earth in terms of resources. It is a paradox that the richest in terms of resources is also the poorest in terms of living conditions of the people. So we can actually make a paradigm shift in changing it. We can change this and make Africa also one of the most developed continents. I usually talk of the story of the African lion. And I will conclude with this. The story of the African lion. The African lion is talking to the Asian tiger. telling the Asian tiger that you, Asian tiger, you have danced for too long on the stage alone. European bear retreated long ago to the polars. The American panther is also on the retreat. But I, as the African lion, have been asleep in the Congo forest. But now I'm awake, bounded by the mountains of Kilimanjaro to the east and the Atlas to the west. The rivers, the Gambia, the Limpopo, the Niger, the Zambezi, the Nile, and the Congo. I'm surrounded by the African bauxite, African iron ore, African copper ore, African gold, African diamonds, and African forests. And we will transform all this wealth, all these raw materials into wealth, and change and transform the lives of my people, and claim the 21st century as an African century. End the story. Thank you. Then we're dealing with open skies, the air transport across the continent. As you will know, at the moment, air transport is a very expensive thing on the continent of Africa, because you don't have air traffic control that is centralized. To travel across the continent, you have got to get permits from country to country to travel, which is not the case like in Europe. Europe, they've got one air traffic control, so that once you got it, you can fly over all those countries to your destination. I'll give you an example. Recently, I was going to the funeral of the president of Namibia. And from Nairobi, you get the permit to fly over Tanzanian airspace, DRC, Zambia, Botswana, and Namibia. I spent 3 hours waiting to get clearance to be able to fly. The other time I was in Dar es Salaam, wanting to go to Niamey in Niger. I spent 10 hours in my hotel waiting because I had to get an overflight permission over Uganda, DRC, Central African Republic, Cameroon, Nigeria, and Niger itself. This is what the issues that we were dealing with. To be able to get one continental air traffic control so that you can be able to travel more cheaply and freely on the continent of Africa. Even commercial airlines have to pay this. That's why the air fares in the continent are too expensive. So dealing with this and also dealing with airports, proper airports or runways was an issue that we're dealing with.
Nataka tu nimshukuru mwenyekiti wa mkutano huu wa faragha kwa kupeana nafasi kidogo ili mwenzetu Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga apate nafasi ya kujitetea kidogo kwetu kama mawaziri wa East African Community ama mambo za nchi za kigeni kutoka East African Community. Nataka nitoe shukrani sana kwa niaba yangu binafsi na pia kwa niaba ya serikali ya Kenya kwa upendo wenu kukubali apate nafasi kidogo ya kuzungumza nasi. Jambo la pili, ningependa tu kusema kwamba mkishamsikia, tafadhali mumweke kwa mawazo yenu na fikira zenu, ili hivi karibuni labda baada ya ushawishi wote tunaweza kuwa na matokeo mazuri ya eneo hili.
The other one is the issue of security. Peace. There can be no development without peace. So we need peace. The African Union has got what they call the Peace Fund. That Peace Fund has not been properly developed. Some countries made contributions there, but it is still very little. We need to expand that fund so that Africans can be able to deal with issues of conflict in the continent themselves. Resolutions was passed about silencing the guns by 2020. It is just on paper. We still have a lot of guns around. So see how you can use the peace fund to be able to help to bring peace across the continent. That's also one of the things that I intend to promote.